Hello, welcome back to Shrewsbury Film Society and this week's online film offering, which is the 2015 film from Japan called Sweet Bean. This is actually a film that we showed at the Hive in the summer of 2017, and we've therefore got this Blu-ray DVD release of it, which comes with a useful interview with the director Naomi Kawase, and also a booklet that fills us in about her background, her motives and her career making so far. So most of what I'm going to say in the next couple of minutes is drawn from these two sources. Kawase was born and grew up in the city of Nara, which is about 300 miles to the south of Tokyo, and it's where she's still based primarily. It's a modest-sized city of about 300,000 people, and is best known for being apparently the oldest city in Japan, dating back 1,300 years. She says it's sufficiently far from Tokyo that she doesn't feel particularly influenced by Japanese filmmaking trends and the industry that is based in the capital city. And she says that she hasn't actually been influenced directly by any other director from her country, although of course she recognises their value. Asked who has influenced her then, she's cited three different directors. One is Victor Erice, the Spanish director who is best known for The Spirit of the Beehive and El Sur, which we actually showed at the Hive a couple of years ago. Second is the film Stalker by the Russian director Andrei Tarkovsky, the contemporary Chinese director Jia Zhangke. Not quite sure how you pronounce his name. All of them, I think, if you said, is there any similarity between their works, you might say there's a bit of a spirit of melancholy, and that maybe permeates this film as well. There are, however, some features of her work that look distinctively Japanese, at least to me. One of them, it's only a small thing, but it's the use of trains on the screen to exclamation marks. I'm not sure what their significance is or when this started, but as far as I can see, this is a really distinctive Japanese technique that goes back to at least the 1950s, to the films of Yasujiro Ozu and so on. And that the Japanese do tend to break up their films by just showing trains moving back and forth as a kind of punctuation mark. And I've never seen this in films from any other country, except when the trains are part of the film's plot. The other distinctive feature, of course, is the use of the cherry trees, which you'll see early on, and their gorgeous blossoms. In fact, I noticed that the German DVD for this film is actually, I think, called something like Cherry Trees and Bean Paste. That's the title they gave it over there. And the cherry trees do act not only to look beautiful, but to mark the passage of time, the changing the seasons, and the overall temporal rhythm of the narrative. In fact, Kawase says that the biggest influence on her filmmaking is actually her childhood visits to the countryside. She was taken to the countryside a lot by her adoptive parents, her actual parents having split up when she was an infant, and neither of them wishing to look after her. So she was actually brought up by her great aunt and great uncle, although I believe he also died when she was quite young. The Japanese title of this film is simply An, A-N, which translates as bean paste. And in fact, you can find on the internet a lot of recipes for making the paste shown in the film. It only seems to involve azuki beans and sugar and a bit of water. So it's something one might want to have a go with, having watched the film. Although Kawase has a background in documentary, this was actually her 8th fictional feature film, and I think she's made 2 more since then. She started making fiction films in 1997 after a run of 15 or 16 short films, most of which were documentaries. And like apparently much of her other work, it mixes documentary style and fictional approaches. So in this film, for example, we've got the handheld camera that one very much associates with documentary makers on the prowl, but also the widescreen format that used to be associated with Hollywood blockbusters, but I suppose has become much more widespread for all sorts of fictional films nowadays. Similarly, she mixes professional and amateur actors together. So in this particular case, the lead female character, Tokue, is actually played by a very well-known Japanese actress, Kiri Kirin, who had well over 100 film credits to her name, and who actually died just after this film was completed at the age of 75. I think in the film at one point she mentions that her age is 76, so she's almost playing herself. It's also interesting to note that the teenager in this film playing the character called Wakana was actually in reality Kirin's granddaughter. One of the main themes that runs through Naomi Kawase's work is incomplete or fractured families, perhaps or probably arising from her own childhood experiences. And in Sweet Bean, you will see a sort of three-generation family emerges in the relationship between the pancake stallholder, his elderly assistant, and his young teenage customer, although the dominant relationship is between the two older adults. In her own words, Kawase calls this the, quotes, the meeting of two souls who unite in order to face life's obstacles. And her optimistic reading is that, again in her own words, there are times when we might find ourselves filled with regret and despair, but we are nevertheless capable of holding on to our hopes and continuing to have faith in the future. So we hope that watching this film leaves you similarly enriched and optimistic about the future, and we look forward to discussing it with you on Zoom in a couple of weeks' time.